What's good, you guys? What's going on? Kensou here. What's up, what's up, what's up? So check it. Recently, Capcom announced at Summer Games Fest their new DLC for Street Fighter 6 Season 2. So the reception for the latest DLC has definitely been a bit of a mixed bag. While fans might be a bit torn, I think it's good to take a look as to why this collaboration between both Capcom and SNK is actually huge. I'm talking huge, right? So without further ado, let's cut right to it. Let's go on a quick journey as to why this is important for both companies.
Capcom versus SNK Millennium Fight 2000.
The alleged origins behind this is pretty interesting, honestly. You see, apparently there was an issue of the now non-existent Arcadia magazine, released only in Japan, in which there were two articles covering both King of Fighters 98 and Street Fighter Alpha 3. Now, both of these were released around the same time in July of 1998. So a quick lore detour on Arcadia magazine for those that don't know. Arcadia was a Japanese magazine that was heavily focused on arcade games such as fighting games, racing games, and shooters. Basically, if it was in the arcade, most likely they covered it, right? Arcadia was published by Interbrain, from which it first debuted back in December 8th, 1999 to its last issue in February 28th of 2015. Arcadia's editors and writers had very close ties with the hardcore gaming scene and the game's developers. This in turn helped build a strong fan culture that influenced the arcade gaming industry of Japan for quite some time. Now, let's get back on point. For some reason, right, the readers of Arcadia magazine had misread the cover, which said KOF versus Street Fighter. So fans were under the assumption that there was a crossover fighting game that was potentially in development. Because of this uproar, Capcom and SNK allegedly made a deal that would allow them to produce only two fighting games under both franchises in 1999. Capcom went on to make Capcom vs SNK 1 and 2, while SNK made SNK vs Capcom Match of the Millennium for the Neo Geo Pocket and SNK vs Capcom Chaos. Also, if one company was the main creator of said game, the distributing company would gain the profits and not the company that licensed the characters for use. In other words, although SNK gave the rights to use the SNK characters for Capcom vs SNK, SNK did not profit from the game, which ultimately did not help their financial problems during that time, unfortunately. There was, however, an exemption to this agreement. The Card Fighter series of games were not fighting games and therefore making them exempt from the rule, so, you know, that was pretty cool. Now, there's a rumor that states that SVC Chaos was only made in order to fulfill the contract obligations that SNK made prior to the company filing bankruptcy and their eventual closing in 2000. So it's kind of unfortunate to hear that, you know, that they basically just did it to fulfill a quota. And SVC Chaos isn't the greatest fighting game, but it's pretty cool for what it's worth, to be honest with you. Fast forward in 2021, POLYGON did an interview with Capcom director Hideki Itsuno, who confirmed that at one point there had been plans for a 3D installment in the Capcom vs SNK series. However, the project had been cancelled due to SNK's bankruptcy. Interestingly enough, The 3D assets that were created for Capcom vs. SNK 3 were later repurposed for their upcoming title, Capcom Fighting All-Stars. Now here's the kicker. This project was set to include King of Fighters Pro Tag Kyo Kusanagi as a guest character during its planned release after a deal was made with the newly reformed SNK Playmore at the time. There were also alleged interviews with SNK that state that it would be possible to renew their contract with Capcom and continue to make Capcom vs. SNK 3, and perhaps other titles bearing the name as well. However, at the same time, in another interview, both companies claimed that they would not do any further collaboration with each other. From that point moving forward, SNK vs. Capcom Card Fighters DS would be the last crossover game between both companies. Additionally, the Capcom Fighting All-Stars project ended up being cancelled as well. However, sometime in January 2009, Yoshinori Ono, the producer of Street Fighter 4, expressed interest in possibly resurrecting Capcom vs. SNK 3 if the fans demanded it. But, you know, we all know Ono is known to be a troll, so yeah, that never happened. I mean, we're still waiting on Darkstalkers 4, right? Yeah, nah. Good try, Ono. Good try. So as you can see, at this point, if you take a look at the timeline, the last fighting game in the series was released in 2003 with SVC Chaos, and last non-fighting game was Card Fighters DS in 2007. At some point, it was believed by many that there may have been some discrepancies between both companies that may have led to a not so good separation. What was the catalyst? I don't think anyone really knows that information, if I'm to be quite honest. But with no real notion to sever whatever ties that may have hindered the companies from ever working together again, this was essentially it for the series. Thus, the end of the Capcom vs. SNK era.
But I wait for your next challenge. I know that you'll be back.
In August 2022, SNK and Capcom artists Isuke Ogura and Shinkiro created special promotional posters featuring both companies' characters to celebrate the 2022 Evolution Championship Series tournament. And this was the first EVO since the pandemic had hit, so I happened to be there and it was definitely a good time. I had a chance to play Street Fighter 6 amongst other things. But that aside, luckily for me, being in attendance, I got my hand on a few of those posters myself. Talk about right place, right time, huh? Well, I mean, anyway, right? For me, as a fan of both companies, I thought to myself, wait, with this poster, does that mean a new Capcom vs. SNK is on the horizon? Nah, ain't no way, right? Nah, that can't be. Well, turns out that later on, an interview with SNK producer Yasuyuki Oda stated that both parties, quote unquote, were interested in potentially revisiting the series once again. I won't lie, I was definitely shocked in seeing that. After having that thought and seeing the interview, I outright just lost my marbles because I actually started my competitive journey actually with CVS2, and then I moved into competitive Guilty Gear. That aside, I was extremely happy to see this, but while I may be happy, what about those that are not aware of the lore and the greatness that is CVS2? Well, I could always make a video highlighting the game and obviously encourage you to play it. Or I could, well, I mean, I could do a lot of things actually, But the point is that this is the start of a new relationship with both companies in which I believe anyone could agree that it's huge. I mean, omega huge. Other than getting a new Capcom versus SNK, we can see more crossover characters into other things not just fighting games, such as the whimsical cult classic Namco x Capcom. Additionally, a little unfortunate because they chose to not release it stateside for whatever reason. Namco, Capcom, hello. You know, thankfully there were fans that translated the game over time, but that's a topic for another time, you guys. And similarly, Project X Zone games for the Nintendo 3DS, in which feature not only Capcom and Bandai Namco, but also the inclusion of Sega. So you can see collaborations have already been a thing within these companies, dating even back in this time frame. At any rate, to address the mixed reception to the DLC, now that we got the lore out of the way, from my understanding so far, it appears to be a few things. One, fans are upset at the choices for the Street Fighter roster. For starters, Bison is a character where, love him or hate him, he's for the most part always going to find his way into the roster due to his stature as the original boss of Street Fighter. Elena, on the other hand, she was a huge fan favorite for a long time. That is until she put people to sleep and took over Street Fighter 4 as potentially the best character in the game due to her survivability in matches due to her healing ultra. That is a time I know most fans do not want to revisit ever again, so the cause for concern for Elena is definitely warranted. And two, right? It seems that fans are a bit upset that 2 out of the 4 DLC characters are guest characters from Fatal Fury. Now, this seems definitely a hit or miss with many because from what I've seen, most seem to be okay with the guest characters, but maybe 1 at a time versus 2 at a time, or even a whole DLC pass. This can be a bit of a throw off due to fans wanting their favorite characters to return in the latest game. I personally resonate with wanting my personal favorite characters to come back, such as C. Viper, or even the long shot as I mentioned before in my previous video, Relento. But it appears Capcom has other plans for their DLC, as explained a bit further for their decisions for the DLC in a recent Famitsu article during Summer Game Fest. Nakayama goes on to state that when it comes to characters, they consider the character's fighting style and their place of origin. So it's somewhat safe to assume they're looking at character uniqueness and what they bring to the table in terms of playstyle to Street Fighter 6. This in turn is what led them to land on Elena. With that being said, let's take a look at M. Bison. So as for Bison, it turns out that Nakayama and Matsumoto had already planned to include Bison at the start of Season 2. The initial goal of Season 1 DLC was to essentially roll out the red carpet for Bison, as all the DLC had some tie to him, especially with Ed starting up the Neo Shadow Loop. Now Akuma, I mean, it's Akuma. He has ties with everyone, but I'm sure he was just to round out the remainder of Street Fighter 6 first DLC, to be honest. But anyway, Bison is described to be the same person from the last game, namely Street Fighter 5, but has caught amnesia after his last battle with Ryu. They really intend to push Bison as a martial artist and have a whole new take on his playstyle, as he's described as more of a pressure character by Nakayama. He goes on to describe the new Psycho Mine and its uses will really push Bison's new playstyle in terms of combos and pressure. Matsumoto also agrees and states, "I think the combo structure with Psycho Mine will grow considerably as Bison is a pretty aggressive character now. In the past, Bison has always been seen as a patient, waiting character, so this time we wanted to approach him with the intent to make him more offensive." So you can see they really want to reinvent Bison while adding some new things like the Psycho Mine to really make him stand out this time, you know? And I feel like people will most likely warm up to his new playstyle once they get their hands on him on June 26th, but with anything, time will tell. Now, as for Terry and Mai, Nakayama, Matsumoto, and Oda had already started talking about collaborating and made it official at EVO 2022 as of the promotional piece as we spoke about earlier. Nakayama said that he had the feeling of wanting to really liven up the fighting game genre and was generally interested in each other's games. With that being said, he is interested himself in City of the Wolves and obviously the growth of Street Fighter 6 as well. So I believe that's what he really means about livening up fighting games. That's also part of this collab. You know, he just wanted to take Street Fighter 6 and not just include just regular Street Fighter characters, but kind of take to the next level with guest characters, right? Now, it's confirmed that both Terry and Mai will retain the core elements of Street Fighter 6 while coming in with their own mechanics, which seem pretty cool. They did confirm that. But what that all entails, I'm not sure myself, so we'll just have to wait and see about that one, of course. Some may wonder exactly as to why Terry and Mai over, say, other KOF characters. Well, in the 90s, there was Street Fighter 2, Hadouken! And there was Fatal Fury 2.
Power Wave!
And both of those games were neck and neck back in the arcade era. And to boot, KOF didn't really come into existence until 1994 with KOF 94. Additionally, Terry is considered SNK's Ryu and Mai is considered SNK's Chun-Li. And Mai in particular was actually the second largest queen of fighting games right next to Chun-Li, and is still considered such today. I mean, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is also on the way, so it's a great way to cross-promote the game and gain new fandom for its characters via Street Fighter 6. So I mean, it makes sense if I'm to be completely honest with you guys, right? So with all this being said, the overall importance of this collaboration is truly, in my honest opinion, in my heart of hearts, it's the celebration of two of the biggest fighting game companies working together once again and severing a tie that was long lost for such a long time, you guys. New fans may not have known, so hopefully this video has helped you kind of gain a little bit more perspective on the situation. And to be honest with you, I totally and truly understand the importance of having fan favorite characters return for Street Fighter 6. However, if there is to be a Capcom vs SNK 3 by way of this initial collaboration, well, to be honest, my friends, it simply opens the doors for those characters that couldn't make it into Street Fighter 6 into a potentially bigger title, furthering the spectacle of them being in that game. Or furthermore, the ability for crossover into Fatal Fury, which quite frankly does well for both companies. So to kind of put it bluntly, you guys, and just be even more honest with you guys, the rivalry of the 90s can lay in the past, right? 2024 is the era of collaborative efforts for all parties involved to continue to bring the most high quality games possible to the fans. Or at least this is exactly what I'd like to think. Because quite frankly, I'd be really upset as a fan knowing how many times SNK has gone through financial issues to eventually cease to exist for any reason at all. And the same goes for Capcom or even Bandai Namco or any of the great companies that produce great titles. Now, these efforts are important also for the gaming industry as a whole. It's definitely bigger than you could imagine on the surface level. And in all honesty, I do hope that the fans can get their favorite characters within the game at some point, because I understand that fully. Because I didn't get C Viper, but I got Terry Bogard and Mai as a consolation prize, so I'm not upset there. But moving forward, you know, if not, right, let's hope for a Capcom vs SNK 3 to be a real thing, to give us all what we want between Street Fighter 6 and Capcom vs SNK 3, and additionally, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. You know, as you guys can tell, I'm just ecstatic here with this, you know. So I don't know, for me at the end of the day, it's just, I'm rambling here, but I would just love to see these fighting games thrive so heavily that for me, I'm just extremely excited, you know. So in conclusion, I'm personally excited for Street Fighter 6 Season 2's DLC and can't wait to give everyone a spin, especially Terry and Mai. I'm also looking to see what the future holds for both SNK and Capcom. So yeah, I mean, that'll do it, you guys, you know. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to leave a like and leave a comment. Let me know how you guys are feeling about the collaboration and what you're looking forward to as well. You know, talk to me, let me know. And with that, everyone, I'm out. Take it light. Peace.